have some fantastic questions that have already been sent in. And so I'm going to start with a few of those, but we'll also be moderating the chat this evening to help, the questions that you're throwing out real time. We'll try to find some answers to those as well. First question I'd like to start with is how do you cultivate strong peer relationships? I'm hoping, Andrew, you might start us off on that, and then maybe Marie and Katie, you can jump in.
Absolutely. Peer relationships are at the core. I mean, all relationships are at the core of a healthy core of a healthy school setting, right? Peer to peer, peer to teacher, et cetera. So there's plenty of opportunities for students to do that. Looking at the upper school where I primarily work, we have an advisory program where a group of 12 students are together throughout the year as ninth graders. And then they transition to an advisory in 10th grade that they stay with 10 through 12. So they have this kind of core group within the community. But then, of course, within our day-to-day interactions, whether it's their classes, the clubs and activities they get involved in, athletics. We have a great peer counseling program where we have upperclassmen connecting with our ninth graders to talk about those things. When we have an all-school event, our seniors walk in with many of our lower schoolers as buddies. So there's many different layers where we try and connect our students and develop those relationships. Last year, I think some of the senior advisories read stories and recorded them and sent them down to lower school classrooms, just again to make those connections, not just within a division, but across the whole school and really strengthen those ties.
And in the middle school, middle school is such a fascinating time of life. And we also, our advisory program is very strong. They've really become kind of little families. For my kids, it's once a nicely, always a nicely. And you get these traditions going. And so it not only kind of builds the relationship between faculty and students, but also just kind of this random group of students. And somehow it comes together and magic starts to happen. We also do a number of different clubs. We have a student government association, and they plan a lot of things. We do activity nights. And one thing that I've found very unique about our middle school in terms of that student to student connection is everybody has a place. That's not real common to say for middle school, I don't think, at least in thinking back to my middle school years. And that's something very special. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the basics there. We also do have athletics. All of our students are required to have athletics to play a sport in fall, winter, and spring. And so they're playing 7th graders and 8th graders on the same teams. And so again, it's just another way of connecting the kids outside of the classroom and in those unstructured times.
Awesome. And then in the lower school, we find as many ways as possible to connect kids from JK through 6 within our own cohorts. So within a classroom of learners, we really start our day off strong with a morning meeting, which we, have a greeting, we share about ourselves, we kind of focus on one question and every student gets an opportunity to share. We play an activity, which is like a small game that requires a lot of listening skills and making sure they're following directions and following a certain standard of behavior. And then we have a morning message where either, we start to identify some words that we're beginning to learn, or we look for some features that we're learning in our phonics, or we start talking about different patterns that we see as well. The morning meeting, really the biggest things that kids get out of it are eye contact is our biggest thing in the lower grades, like making sure you're looking at the person you're speaking to. And also when somebody's speaking to you, you should be looking at them to offer them that kindness and that respect of, giving them correct body language and eyes on them. And then just really showing ways that we can include others, basically not interrupting, waiting our turn, using silent signals such as this, like me too. I share that in common instead of most, 6-year-olds who like to interject, like, I have that too, or I have the next edition. They can just simply show like this, that we have that in common, and kids can have that common language and know that somebody in their class feels the same way or has something in common with them. And then as a school, we also have a lower school morning meeting once a week. And it looks relatively similar. A couple different things mixed in where we get an opportunity to share some of the learning that's happening. Different grade levels get an opportunity to share. and it's really just a special event that we have each week. And I know first grade especially, they really look forward to it each week. And as kids grow into older ages, they get more responsibility within the meeting, and it's really student led by the 5th and 6th graders, which is really special. We also have after school programs that students can join. They're all interest based. And then we also have programs during the school day, based on their interests. Like we have like in first grade, there's like a mermaid club. And they all talk about what they love about mermaids, and they read books about mermaids, and they just think it's the best thing ever. And that's what they do during their snack time. We also have like a Pokemon club that's huge right now in the lower school. Kids, bring their information, they bring their cards, they bring the things they want to share. Obviously within a controlled environment to make sure it's done fair and appropriate. But those are just some of the things that we do like as a whole school. And otherwise we do a lot of lessons about like how to include others, how to be a good friend, how do you talk to somebody if they're doing something that bothers you. We have class jobs. We have a lot of other things that really can get students involved with the community that they just really enjoy.
Maria, I love that you brought up some of the clubs, because our next question is really about how can students dabble in exploring their curiosities without long commitments. If they want to try something, can they try it? And how, if it doesn't hold their interest over a period of time, can they try something else? And, I think that's a great example of it. And I'd like to actually bring Joey into this part of the conversation, because I think that really is a lot of what innovation is about. Joey, can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. You just stole my answer. That is what innovation is all about. Of that, especially so the way our program goes in the lower school, that's all it's about, is exploring, dabbling. It is teacher led in that I will invite them to try something, but I invite them to try everything over the course of JK through 4th grade, and then 5th and 6th they get even more intense dabbling. So they're going to build with cardboard, they're going to use a 3D printer, they're going to build with a million different building toys, they're going to learn to code, they're going to sew, they're going to make circuits, they're going to do some robotics. All of that we consider a whole lot of swimming around in the ocean. And then when they get to 7th and 8th grade, they can begin to specialize and choose if they want to try makers as an elective, or computer science, or robotics, or broadcast communication. And then upper school, they get even more deep into the program. But middle school, and maybe Katie can explain this a little bit better, because I feel like the goal in middle school, even though they pick an elective, they're still dabbling because they can pick more than one, right, Katie? They do like 2 days a week, or
yeah. Yeah, this is something we started to encourage dabbling
Yes.
a couple of years ago, where students can take they can split up their elective schedules. So they could have 2 days of makers and 1 day of broadcasting, or 2 days of robotics and 1 day of study hall. Or it's very much mix or match. Again, to kind of encourage them to try out these different things. And it's amazing because we really do see the impact, specifically in our makers program, of what they do in the lower school. Our makers program, it's very self-guided, but you see the confidence that it builds in our students. And some students go in there. We've had kids making the most incredible skateboard. We've had kids who have made their own electric guitars just by tinkering around and using the materials and the all the different tools. Our middle school also always participates in the Magic Wheelchair organization, where every year there's children who are wheelchair bound. They apply into this program, and they have this incredible, our kids create this incredible Halloween costume that fits around their chair. So 2 years ago, it was Nats themed. And so they went down to Nationals Park and were able to unveil it to the student in the locker room. This year it was a princess theme. It's an amazing program, but again, it's another way that we kind of have our programs intertwined between the academics, the electives, service, leadership, all of those different things. But it's I always say I want to be in the makers class. So
And I would just add, Dawn, I don't know if you want me to talk about it at all, but I didn't mention I'm also a parent of one alum and one junior who's been at Flint Hill since kindergarten. And I can assure you it's not just innovation where we dabble, but that's my favorite. But my kids tried several different kinds of art. They were in choir, then they did drama, then now my other one became a dancer in ninth grade because of Flint Hill dance program. So there's plenty of room for not just in innovation, but in many of our specials areas to try something, and then you don't have to stay with it forever. You can switch to something else the next semester or the next year.
Rico or Andrew, can you jump in and just talk a little bit more about even just that exploration of passions as you see it grow? We've heard a little bit about like lower through middle. Can you speak up through the rest of the program?
I'll jump in, Andrew. I'll start and then maybe we'll share it. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rico Reed. I'm sorry I'm late. I also coach boys varsity basketball game and we just had a game this evening. I think
Good question, Rico. How'd it go?
We got the W. We won.
Oh,
Yes. Thank you. All right. That's why I'm smiling. Anyway, I think what we have had the opportunity to witness and, I haven't had a chance to be here for celebrating my 18th year at Flint Hill. I've had a chance to support this community in several different ways. And what I've enjoyed most is what Katie referenced earlier is the level of confidence that we are able to instill in our children. And that's JK through 12. As kids are really, really confident and truly being themselves in this community, kind of swinging and missing, getting things, missing the target a little bit, but staying focused on accomplishing their goal. I think the opportunity to learn how to collaborate and understand the value of collaboration is something that's incredibly important, especially at the early age, as we get to see them actually execute those plans in middle school and in the upper school. I think the combination of exploration, investigation, and collaboration ultimately results in us producing, I think, the ambassadors of tomorrow. As we focus on kids' willingness to share perspectives, their willingness to respond, and I don't know if I know I was late, but I don't know if we talked about the power of yet, which is really, really prominent in the lower school. I think there's a through line there. I think that it continues to exist and applies itself in the upper school as well. What I also enjoy about it is at every level, our kids are so welcoming to kids who join our community at different points. Our natural entry points are 5th, 7th, and 9th. But as kids enter this community, whether it be 4th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade, our current students do an excellent job of making it clear what the expectations are. Everything is driven by our core values, but the foundation of this community is relationships. And kids see the value in it. Kids understand that there's a certain level of pride associated with being a Flint Hill Husky. And I think it's on full display every day, whether that's in the classroom, on the ball fields, in the choir room, or generally at any type of town or community meeting. I think our kids really, really have pride in being a true Husky. And that's something that I think we celebrate on a daily basis.
Yeah, I really think, just to echo what everyone else has said, like there's many opportunities to touch on and explore things, and then that could become a new interest, a deeper interest, but it can also be, you know what, that wasn't for me. I gave it a shot and I didn't like it. But, I can think of just as many examples of a student who, because we require everyone in the upper school to complete a credit of the fine art to, as Joey mentioned, they're like, oh, you know what, I'm going to go for dance. And now they've made it a big part of their time. Or they try foundations in digital art for one semester and they do ceramics for another for that full, that complete experience. But I think the way our curriculum is designed, obviously we have requirements that students need to complete, but then there's that room for exploration, both inside and outside the classroom. And great example, I can think of a student where they started dabbling and it's become their passion, is a student in their freshman year really started to get interested in computer science, and so they started working that into their curriculum along with everything else. And now, as a senior, she is participating in an internship with the Department of Defense, and so she's doing that as a full-time student at Flint Hill as on the side. But that, if you were to hear her talk about it 4 years ago, she would have never thought this was the path she was going to walk. But because she had the opportunity to explore that, give it a try, it really turned into something. And I know that's a fairly exceptional case, but it's a good example of the many different ways students can, I'm just going to give this a shot, and then they keep with it. And just as many students say, I'm going to give this a shot, and then say, you know what, I'm going to change course. And that's fine as well. That's what it's all about.
Andrew, we've got a question that kind of segues into a little bit. Does Flint Hill have any partnership industries or businesses to help students with summer jobs, internships, or areas they're interested in learning about?
Absolutely. We don't have any kind of automatically formal partnerships because, every year we have a group of students. Every class is a little different. They have different interests, but we do cultivate, when we know a student does these things, we note down that information to when another student comes along and says, I'm interested in that, we say, hey, we had this student do this in the past. Why don't you check this out? One of the best tools we have, actually two tools that we have that have been really great for our students, is every student in the upper school must complete a senior project. So their last day of classes as a senior is at the very end of April, beginning of May, and then they go away from school and complete usually 72, 80-hour project, which often takes the form of an internship, but other things that they do away from school with a company, with a program and organization, and then they need to keep a journal and do a presentation to a panel of faculty, and that's their final step towards graduation. And so we have a massive database of information of students who've done projects that have turned into summer jobs, et cetera, that we can always tap into to help our students. And then we have a great thing about where we are is we have a really robust alumni base right here in the greater Northern Virginia, DC area. And so our director of alumni relations will sit down with students and they'll say, hey, I'm interested in this. And she'll say, someone who went to Flint Hill works in that industry. Let's connect you to do that. So lots of different opportunities in many different ways. So again, there isn't kind of one student does this one thing at a particular place every year because of this diversity of interests, but we always have our students exploring a lot of different opportunities, and we are very supportive of that and have a lot of resources for them to tap into to kind of find the path that works for them.
Thank you. Ben, I'm going to throw one your way. So we have someone who'd like to learn a little bit more about Learning Center. It's engagement with students and faculty. And I think that, and my curious question is how does the LC impact all learning at Flint Hill?
Sure. So anyone with Katie in their view can see her nodding ferociously. The Learning Center is a really deeply integral part of each division in different and unique ways. We are a resource, first and foremost, not just for students, but also for the entire faculty and staff. We provide some professional development for them. We help them understand what learning can and should look like, the different ways that they might see it in their classroom, and how to make their classroom spaces compatible with a whole bunch of different kinds of learners. Sometimes that looks like individual interactions with a teacher and maybe a teacher, an LC specialist, a learning center specialist, and a tutor. Or I'm sorry, not a tutor, a student. Sometimes it may sort of be, as the kids get older, we want them to take a little more ownership and have some agency over those things. So we help them develop some self-advocacy skills to go and approach their teachers, their deans like Mr. Kane, right? Or their teachers like Miss Nicely to say, I have a question. And then Miss Nicely can say, what's your question? And they can express what they need a little bit of extra help with. But that's all of these skills, are things that we try to develop as broadly and holistically as we can. One of the things that Andrew Kane and I just developed for the 9th graders was a little mini course, and we're still developing some more parts of it for our 9th graders, which we started a few weeks ago to help give them some foundational school skills on how to study for an assessment, how to not study for an assessment for 4 hours one night before, but how to do it sort of in other and different ways. And that's not because Miss Nicely did not teach them differently in middle school, but it's because everybody needs a refresher and everybody needs a little more concrete strategy that they can try and apply. So that's something that we developed recently that was for our entire 9th grade. In the 6th grade, in a sort of parallel way, we actually have an entire study skills course that the Learning Center teaches for all 6th grade students. So there's a number of places that we're getting in and getting a little bit of a little touch point with every child. But if we're not doing it directly with them, we are absolutely doing it indirectly with their teachers.
And if I can just kind of hop on to the kind of teacher side that I've seen of the Learning Center, when I first came to Flint Hill a long time ago, it was actually the Learning Center that most impressed me. And to see the Learning Center grow in the way that it has over the last 16 years is pretty incredible, because nobody learns in the same way. And I know when I was in school, it was this is this and that is that, and the end. And the way that Flint Hill is able to actually embrace and encourage these students to discover what works best for them, and how to tackle the challenges that they run into. Something that's amazing that I see from the teacher side in our Learning Center is, I think what is most important to me is the fact that there's absolutely zero stigma attached to it. Kids are in and out of the Learning Center, and there's not like a social, everything is social in middle school. There's not this social, oh, you're doing this. Oh, it's just a part of who we all are. And as a teacher, I can say that having Learning Center students and my non-Learning Center students, at the end of the day, I teach my classes in the same exact way. And it's made me that much better of a teacher, because I'm always thinking, how can I do this better? And I think it's to the benefit of all of our students, not just our Learning Center students. And so it is a pretty amazing program. Sorry, my dog just came in. So I'm going to get rid of my dog now.
So we've got a question I think is a great kind of, partner question to this topic. And I'm going to invite any of our panelists to jump in. And that's, how does Flint Hill challenge kids to work to their fullest potential while maintaining a loving atmosphere? Who wants to start us off?
I can start us off on that one. So just as a, little aside, I am in 1st grade, so it looks a little different with our 1st graders. We're working with kids, trying to create a safe space for them to really take that meaningful risk, and trying to teach them what a meaningful risk is, because obviously for a 6-year-old, that's really hard for them to conceptualize that. So certain things that we focus on is we invite the idea of collaboration. We share the idea of it seems like you've tried a lot of different strategies. Do you think you'd like to work this out with somebody else? Or you can say something along the lines of would you like to try one with me? Would you like to try it on your own? Just inviting that idea of collaboration. Some students really cling to that and say, yes, that's what I would like to do to work through this right now. Also, some ideas we do is gaining insight on what is the problem for the kids and helping them through that. Show me how you got started. What did you do next? And then what did you do? Where are you finding the most difficulty? And then what are some things you remember about this? What could we do next? And then also to extend their ideas of thinking, kind of talking about, what resources around the room could help you? Even though you're not sure what to do just yet, look around. What are some things that you could access? Whether it be writing time, they can look at our writing board. During math, they can access some of the manipulatives or the tools. They have access to all of those different things. We also have math strategies on the board that can support them. Same with reading. We have all of our different, phonics features that we've learned, all the different heart words, all of the reading strategies we've taught. Those are all up for them to access, and just helping them draw attention to what part of the room should we go to right now? How can we really hone in on this? and maybe even asking questions like, well, what else do you know about this? How have you done this in a different way before? Have you ever done a problem like this? Or have you written a sentence like this before? Just helping them recall like previous experience with it. And like I said, more of just helping students work through that risk and helping them understand that there's far more reward out of trying something hard than there will ever be, you know, and never be like where it's not a reward, where they feel like it's negative or it's something that they shouldn't feel good about afterwards. Like they'll never feel so sad, because at least they're trying. And if they make a mistake, it's okay. Everybody's going to make a mistake, and we welcome the mistakes, and we talk about, especially with 6 and 7-year-olds, how a mistake is a sign that you're at least trying. And that's what we want out of you right now. Is just try your best, and we're going to be here to help you every step of the way, whether it be through peers or through us or through whomever.
In the middle school, I can say that students really start to find their voices in middle school. And through, I mean, I teach history, so I can speak most clearly to that. We tackle so many different topics that sometimes get a little bit heated. And what's amazing to me is how much respect our students have for each other just innately. And the whole purpose of our middle school is to help students find their voice and learn how to responsibly use their voice, not just to run, but to how to disagree in a respectful and productive way, and how to really form their thoughts. And so I think we really encourage kids to push themselves, but we also have a very safe space. We've created a very safe space for them to push themselves. And it's not always pretty. Not much in middle school is, but at the end of the day, these kids come out of it and they are so proud of themselves because they have that ownership. They've bought into it. And I think it's just a testament to our community. The way that our students support each other is amazing. So.
I mean, I strongly agree with everything that's already been said. Obviously, every division is going to have a slightly different feel. Obviously, the upper school is it's teenagers in the midst of being teenagers. So there's a lot of you know, the angst and anti-authoritarian streaks that run through all teenagers and all that stuff. But at the same time, you know, I think it's all about just letting them know from the adult to peer, you know, teacher peer relationship that we're here to support you. Everything we do is to support you. And sometimes I've seen it. This just happened to me the other day. I had a student last week in the 9th grade who had the flu and was out for a week. And, you know, he was walking by and I saw him in the hallway and I said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I'm feeling much better." And I said, "You know, I'd really love for you to stop by my office and check in." And I immediately saw him stiffen, right? Like, you know, oh my gosh, the dean wants me to come see him. You know, I must be in trouble. And I said, no, I just, with the winter break coming, we only have a week of school and I want to make sure you feel good about what you need to do to catch up while keeping up with your work and what I can do, you know, to support you in my role. And, you know, then he relaxed and said, "Oh, okay." And, you know, but at the same time, you know, I think students can find themselves in a situation where if they don't feel like they get that support, then they won't reach out for it when they need to. And so we work really hard in the upper school, particularly on that self-advocacy, because soon they're going to be going off to college where a lot more is going to be put on their shoulders as individuals, as learners and everything else. And so they really need to develop those skills. But I also think, again, the community piece, the kids with each other, they are really great. And we, again, provide a lot of opportunities for them to go out of their comfort zones. And the best example I can give of that is a few years ago, we started a lovely tradition in the upper school of about a monthly open mic. And that open mic, I think, is when we see all our core values come together, because not every student who puts themselves out there is the most talented singer, the most talented musician or whatever, but every single kid is cheering them on, is excited to hear what they have to say or do. The stand-up performances are always a little rough, but, you know, I love the kids taking a chance. You know, the last one we did, a student and a teacher performed a violin performance together because she knew that he played the violin. And she went to him and said, "I'd love to perform with you." You know, and again, talking about dabbling and feeling comfortable, we had a student who just joined our community this year at only the second open mic of the year get up and perform, which to me says everything about the support and pushing students to achieve their goals, that he felt that he was ready to kind of put himself out there in such a public way. So I think, you know, we're constantly asking students to reach for their goals and push themselves towards it, knowing that there's a strong net of support for them. On the flip side, and I know Rico will smile at this because I've heard him say it the most, sometimes the way we also provide that support, particularly in the upper school, is when we have to say no, when a student might be overextending themselves and we have to help them understand, you know, if you do this, you might be stretching yourself too thin or whatever, and having those conversations as well, which is also important because there are limits, there are boundaries, et cetera. And all of that really helps, you know, bring everything together in a really great way. It's just been such a pleasure seeing how those different interactions happen on a daily basis.
Thank you. Joey, I'm going to ask you to put your parent hat on a moment for us. I know you have a creative writer in the house. So would you be able to speak a little bit about just that from your, you know, parent perspective, and even maybe as a, you know, faculty member, a little bit about the creative writing program at Flint Hill?
Oh, that's I thought, okay, sure. I thought I was going to talk about the arts, but okay.
Well, that too. You can segue right into that.
Listen,
we can all pick a little bit of that up.
Talk about overextended children. That's my house. Okay, sure. Creative writing. So I'm thinking particularly about upper school, but I can talk all the way. I mean, in lower school, creative writing is the bread and butter of what we do, because kids are writing stories, telling stories constantly, poetry, stories. Before we get too worried about teaching essay writing with our youngest writers, they start with story making in kindergarten, and that's the term we use right away. They are making stories, so we begin it right away. In fact, in my innovation lab this week, kindergartners are making stop motion movies with puppets that they made to tell stories with their puppets. So we are creative writing from the beginning. But it does go all the way up more officially through our language arts and our you know, writing that we teach in the classroom. Also in the upper school, we have a literary magazine, which is a student-run group. They invite other students to participate. Then they have a panel of kids. They read all the submissions and decide what goes in. We also have a creative writing prize every year. We also have a writer's day in the upper school where we invite a writer to come and talk and work with the kids. So there's a lot of opportunities, both formally and informally. There's actually, my daughter is directing and acting in student written plays. We're doing 10-minute student plays coming up in February. Everyone come out and give them a watch. But students in a writing class wrote short plays that other students are now directing and acting in. So there's a lot of different opportunities. Also, you know, they could be on the yearbook, they could be writing in the yearbook, they could be writing, I mean, there's a million different ways. I skipped over middle school. Sorry, Katie. But I'm sure we're doing lots of creative writing there too. Actually, my child, when I think back in 8th grade, took creative writing many moons ago, but it's been a while. So I don't know if there's anything to add, or we can just leave it at that. Dawn.
Would anyone like to add anything about creative writing?
I can add a little bit. Just, I think our school, we really do drive creative writing at such a young age that it really is something that we see, you know, as they shape through middle school and the upper school. It is pretty incredible. And just breaking it down to like the 1st grade level, we're already talking about like, what does the writing process look like? Talking about a pre-write, what do you do during a pre-write? We introduce a number of different like graphic organizers or opportunities, like Joey was mentioning. They have like different puppets, or they have different things that they can build with. We've had students use Legos or other things to try to explain their story. They record themselves as they're like telling the story. Once they feel comfortable with it, we start letting them, you know, write with that storytelling as well. And we cover, you know, tons of different areas with like the types of writing that they do. We in first grade do a ton of list writing, letter writing, card writing. We do a lot of thinking journals. So anytime they start a science or social studies or even reading and math, like, what are you thinking about this? And they can write their questions down. We write with our 5 senses during the different seasons. In the fall, we went on a field trip to the farmer's market, used our 5 senses to describe all the things we found. We also, in the spring, we do an animal research project, which again, that ties into a lot of our field trips this year. We went to Hidden Oaks the other day. Actually, it was super fun. The kids had a great time just getting to know all the animals for how they get ready for the winter, how different animals adapt and what they do. We'll return again in the spring to talk about how they get ready for spring. But also we plan to go, to the botanical gardens, the National Zoo and Meadowlark, and some bird watching nearby as well, just to help really help them observe with their 5 senses and, find that interest that they can write about in terms of animals. And then we also do things like the weekend reporter. After they come back, they write about their weekend. They say, like, what did I do on Friday? What did I do on Saturday? What did I do on Sunday? We do things like photo starts, like they bring in a photo of something that's really special to them, and then they share the story with the class, and then they write it. So we're doing a ton of things at the youngest ages to get them really writing in many different ways that really lends itself to the creative process as they go through the lower school. And the cool thing about having this many things going on at a time is that kids have the opportunity to pick and choose what is meaningful to them and what isn't meaningful to them. For example, some kids really like writing lists, and some kids really like being a weekend reporter and telling you all of the things that they did over the weekend. But that's what makes it so special, is that every kid kind of jumps into what's important to them, and they can go through their creative process with what is most meaningful to them.
If I could just add one quick thing, John, just because, I think going back to kind of the early question of dabbling and how much you want to get involved or not, whether it's you take a class doing this where you're doing it for a whole semester, a year, or you just write for the Lit Mag, or you compete for every year. Our English department in the upper school runs a creative writing and another writing prize, an expository writing prize. So, you can just enter that even if you have done no other creative writing throughout your time at Flint Hill. There's a lot of different opportunities. But I just wanted to share, because I think it really encapsulated perfectly what one of our upper school teachers on the course page for her writing poetry and short fiction, the opening line of about the class, it says, "This class is, to borrow a metaphor from Stephen King's On Writing, a permission slip to write. We will write during every class period until we produce an entire semester's worth of poetry and short fiction." And she brought in, our director of the fine arts is a playwright in his own right. So when they did playwriting in Villanelles, he came in and guest lectured to the class and kind of guided them through that. And so tapping into different resources within the communities to, really, really explore these spaces. And then, as Joey already mentioned, this 10-minute these 10-minute plays are going to be an incredible opportunity to hear what our students have to say and how they're going to present themselves in those areas. So just so many great opportunities. It's wonderful. And every year we do produce a Lit Mag that has a lot of art and writing from our students that just every single year just blows me away.
Thank you, Andrew. Rico, can I have you jump in and talk a little bit about just our visual arts and music programs across the divisions?
Okay, can everyone hear me? Yes. I think what we have is we have an emphasis and a focus on the whole child. And as we continue to focus on the whole child, we want kids to be able to identify their passions in areas other than just the core courses. So while there's emphasis obviously on the humanities, your English and your history and obviously your STEM courses, we also recognize that there are opportunities for growth in those other areas. And what we've been able to do, JK through 4, is expose them to different rhythmic options and instruments and things of that nature. And then starting grade 5, it becomes mandatory to select from one of the 4 strands, orchestra, band, choir, or percussion. And our hope is that that's a spark that ultimately results in them including that in their electives as they journey through grades 7 through 12. What I also love about Flint Hill is that we support, and I think Andrew mentioned this when he referenced the open mic situation, where our kids will support each other regardless of the scenario, regardless of the situation, regardless of what level they're on. And I think it ultimately results in not just collaboration, but a bit of teamwork where kids are willing to partner and work with others to maybe develop their skills, whether that be in band or art. In the upper school, as we talk about the long game, it ultimately becomes an opportunity to have an impact on the community as well. Our ceramics, which has had an Empty Bowls event for years in the past, where we would support, other marginalized groups or groups that were in need. I think what ends up happening is, in addition to it would not be unusual to have a conversation with a high school junior at Flint Hill who has AP and honors classes, but who also still has percussion on their schedule, or choir on their schedule, or ceramics on their schedule. And they've identified that this is a passion. So as Joey talked a little bit earlier about, maybe sometimes, kids may be overwhelmed or in a moment of trying to make decisions. We recognize that there's value in having those classes that could be identified as maybe a break in the action or break in the routine that ultimately becomes a part of their life moving forward.
Anyone else like to add anything about our fine arts and music programs at Flint Hill? Yes, I think there's certainly just a plethora of opportunity there, and again, area for a student to specialize in as they go through the program. Drama, as Joey mentioned, is definitely also a part of those arts offerings, and that becomes a course offering grades 7 through 12, or various course offerings, I should say, grades 7 through 12. So lots of opportunity to explore that area of interest, give it a try, see if it's something that might fit or not, or try something else, or keep that in conjunction with other passions. You can be a really great thing about Flint Hill too is you can have multiple passions that you're exploring. So you might be a student who is really interested in delving deep in like music theory, but also wants to, really take some high level math classes and do some robotics. And that's all very, very doable. And I think that that's an important thing to remember, is that we have lots of opportunity to choose. It definitely is a choose your path.
Dawn, and I just wanted, I saw there was a question in the chat about the digital arts.
Yeah. And
I did just want to throw that out again, as the parent of a child who has gone down that path. I swear, in fact, my child, who's a sophomore in college, just did the entire layout for the school satirical magazine that was published yesterday through the college, they have a website for their satirical magazine, and learned that through Flint Hill, through every class that Catherine Huber offers. So there's literally no need to take anything else other than that path. I mean, because you can start out as an intro in digital arts, and then there are so many classes. I can't believe how many classes we have in just that area that stem out of that into photography and into filmmaking. I mean, you can make a film, in high school in a class. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. And my child is now making movies at college too. Like, everything my sophomore in college is doing is because of something that they were introduced to somewhere from 1st grade to 12th grade at Flint Hill. And I'm 100% genuine in that remark. We didn't do a ton of outside activities. We didn't have to, because there were so many things available to my kids at school that they just filled up their bucket with everything Flint Hill gave them. And you can do, if you want to do dance team, but you don't want to take dance at school because you want to do, Latin and French instead, and you don't have time, but you can do dance team as your sport. Like, there's just so many ways that you can get at the art that you're interested in, that you have room in your schedule for really a lot more than you think. That's all. I'm done.
We have a question in the chat on, can you describe your student counseling services and sort of that background? We don't have any of our counseling staff with us today on on this call. We do have counselors in each of our divisions. In the lower school, the counselors really focused on teaching that wellness class, which teaching mindfulness, self-regulation, certainly communication skills. But I'm going to ask some of our team to jump in to talk. Maybe Marie, you could talk a little bit more about wellness in lower school.
Absolutely, yeah. In the lower school, we do a ton with wellness. We start our year off with lessons about just how to be inclusive, how to include others, why should we include others. We do this through a lot of social stories and a lot of role playing. Simple things such as, let's say there's a student who is feeling left out on the playground. What can they do? How do they support themselves through that moment? And at the youngest level, we have things such as the buddy bench. If you feel like you don't have a friend to play with, you can go sit on the buddy bench, and the students know that if you see somebody on the buddy bench, like, it's our job to go over and like lift them up and have them join you. And just talking about inclusivity and what does that look like and what does that mean. We also do a lot of lessons on listening. Like, what does listening look like? How can we be active listeners? What does our body look like? What does our level of voice look like or sound like? And also, how do you show others that you're listening attentively? And then another big one that we really focus on, especially with our first grade cohort this year, is what do you do if someone's bothering you? Or if somebody's done something that makes you feel sad or makes you feel a certain way? We call it a bug and a wish. We tell them to share, like, it bugs me when you call out. I wish you would raise your hand so we all have a turn to share. Or it bugs me when you take the toy I was playing with. I wish you would ask for a turn. Just common language like that, so that the students understand that it's not coming from a place of anger. It's coming from a place of, my feelings are hurt, and I want you to see how I'm feeling and hear how I'm feeling, and let's work through this together. I know a lot of families, especially since we've started incorporating this with our wellness program, they're using it at home, and the parents are having, like, they're loving it at home. Like, it bugs me when you don't pick up your dish from dinner. I wish you would put it in the sink, or something along those lines. The parents are eating up this language as well, which has been really super helpful. Also, we do just a lot with, like, how to be a good friend, how to make friends, just, really honing into that. We talk about body control. What does it look like to invade somebody's space? How can we provide respect of someone else's space? How much space are we given? Because it is such a vague thing. Like, it's not like we don't have bubbles surrounding us, but we all know that we do. We all have different size bubbles. We all, like, some people like hugs, some people don't. And helping 6 and 7-year-olds navigate that has been super helpful. And our counseling team has been really supportive through that process and helping us find really, really great, stories to share with the students, whether it be through text or just social stories that we can share about, make-believe characters, role playing, which the kids love, acting out certain situations and helping them navigate it, and having them, look at problems and talk about different ways that we could approach it. What are some different ways you could communicate what's happening? And also, most importantly, when to get an adult, and when to not get an adult. Is this a kid issue or is this an adult issue? And helping them draw that line and be advocates for themselves and their friends as well.
Thanks. I'm going to ask Ben Harper to jump in on this one as well.
Sure. I saw the question in the chat, and just to sort of get to the specifics of it, we have the Learning Center works really closely with the counselors across all 3 divisions. We have one full-time counselor in the lower school, one who's sort of part-time who helps teach wellness as well. We have one full-time counselor in the middle school, and then we have 3 full-time counselors and a part-time counselor in the upper school. All of them are at various stages of their sort of master in social work training. We have some that are on, like, the these counseling equivalent to master teachers, right? And some who are still working through the processes that are involved in those sort of certifications and so forth. But all of them are highly trained, highly qualified, and they work with really almost any student in the school, sort of full stop. There's no qualifications sort of there. And they'll work with them on anything from I'm having a hard day to I'm having a social situation in middle school that's hard for me to understand, to things that are even a little more complex, are things like test taking, test anxiety, or just some students who need a little bit of support with their social emotional health, all the way through 12th grade. They are kind of in a similar way to the Learning Center. They are integral to how we function. They advise and guide a lot of how we work with all of our students. But they're a gem, and they're a phenomenal resource for the entire school.
Thanks so much, Ben. We have a question that says, similar to how Ms. Starnes spoke about dance team, is there an opportunity to participate in robotics team if you play a sport after school as a club, perhaps? Mr. Kane, you want to take this one?
Yes, I couldn't find my unmute button. Yes, I can. Yes, I believe, it depends on how involved students want to be in certain things, but yes, absolutely. Our school day is structured so that there is time when classes end, but when other things can happen before athletics begin. And so there's absolutely the opportunity. We want we want students who really want to kind of focus on one particular area to have the opportunity to do that. But we also want students who want to get involved in a lot of different things to be able to do that as well. And so we wouldn't want to limit a student from getting involved in one area just because they happen to also want to play a sport or something like that. So there's absolutely, whether it's doing our robotics classes through our innovation department or getting involved in some other activities around those areas in addition to their sports piece, there's plenty of opportunities to do so. And we want that and support that. We want our students to really be able to pursue as much as they can, while balancing all the the many plates they're often spinning. Joey, you want to?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say we have, as the former JK through 12 innovation chair, I think this is still accurate, that we do have a robotics club after school, as well as a cybersecurity club. And both of those clubs are competitive in that they participate in competitions. And as much as possible, we want kids to be able to do more than one thing. Sometimes you can't do everything and you have to make a decision, but the robotics team is mostly in the fall. So if you're maybe a spring athlete, but you want to do the robotics team, you do get an activity credit to participate in that robotics team after school. So that also helps toward your graduation requirements. And the cyber security club also will be getting an activity credit for that as well. And they compete in competitions, but you could take cybersecurity as a class or as a club or both. So just like Andrew was saying, you can pick and choose how you want to do it.
We have a question about that we received ahead of time about the girls lacrosse program. I would say that please email us, because we'd be happy to connect you to our athletic director or with our lacrosse coach. So if you have really very specific athletic questions, please reach out, because we're happy to make those connections so you can get your specific questions about any of these topics really answered. So don't hesitate to reach out to us a little bit more about that. I think we're winding down. I think our last question here in the chat is a great one. It's, with so many course offerings, how does a student identify what they'll take?
I'll start from the upper school perspective. When it's depending on where a student, when a student's entering, if they're coming in, whatever grade it is in the upper school, we'll have them take some placement tests, among other things, but also we'll talk to families about what they're interested in doing, because, there's certain things that you have to take in order to graduate from Flint Hill. We have very clear graduation requirements, which I'll just run down very quickly. It's 4 years of English, 3 years of math, and you have to get to at least Algebra 2, 3 years of history, and you have to take United States history, 3 years of science, and you must take physics, chemistry, and biology, year of fine arts, and I think that's everything within I think I covered it all, but the point is, there's a lot of opportunities to go
Answer, they
there.
need a language.
Oh, language. Geez, you need to do, thank you. As someone who majored in language in college, I should have remembered that. 2 years of 2 languages, or through the 3rd level of 1 language. But the point is, there's a lot of things students have to take. So sometimes you're working within the construct of the requirements, but then there's opportunities within the schedule, because that's not going to fill everything, to take those classes to discover new interests. So sometimes it'll come out of just what you're doing, oh, I'm going to take the foundations in digital art class as my fine art requirement. And suddenly that becomes a whole strand of your entire upper school career. You're beyond that. You might try a new language, and then that becomes a real strong passion for you. There's a lot of things, we have an intro to econ course that students will take, and then they're like, I love this. And then they might move on in senior year to their AP macro or microeconomics. So there's also opportunities to take intro level courses and those prerequisites to see, okay, I like this, and now I want to go heavy in that area, versus, you know what, math's not my thing, so I'll stay kind of, I'm not going to go too broadly exploring within the math curriculum. I'll stick with kind of the path I'm on, or whatever it might be. But there's lots of resources. Your advisor, our upper school academic dean, the college counselors, everyone plays a role in giving feedback once our students are here on what they want to do and how they can pursue those goals, to make sure that they are putting together a schedule that makes sense for them, both in the next year, but also in the big picture of their high school career and beyond.
Thank you so very much. Well, thank you to our panelists for being part of this evening's event and answering so many questions. And thank you to our attendees for posing so many questions. We really appreciate your curiosity this evening. And as I put in the chat, please reach out to us if you have additional questions. We are always happy to answer them. You can reach us in the admission office. We're happy to connect you with other people, some of the people even that you've met tonight at Flint Hill, and try to get those questions answered for you. If you are just starting your journey with Flint Hill, we look forward to getting to know you. And certainly just a reminder that our application deadline is coming up here in the new year, January 20th. And so we'd be happy to work with you through that process. If you're in the middle of that process, we look forward to completing it with you. And again, any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you and have a great evening.